Welcome to Aging Insight with your host, John Ross and Lisa Schollmeyer. This program is made possible by
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Aging Insight. I'm Lisa Schollmeyer and I am here with John Ross, and we are elder law attorneys based right here in the Arklatex, Texarkana area. And you know, we are here, we come to you every week. We hope that we bring a topic of interest and information to you that makes you think about things like how you're going to manage yourself in retirement and remain independent as long as possible, and to not go broke as you are living out those golden years. And that's what Aging Insight is all about.
Yeah, we're here to make sure that whatever it is that you want, how you envision your life, especially in those later years, we want that to happen. We know it can happen, but we know in order for it to happen, you've got to have knowledge. You've got to know, so often people have had wonderful lives, and wonderful lives have led to comfort, and they feel blessed, and all of that is fantastic. But all of that can change just like that. And if you're not prepared for that change when it comes, you can get into a lot of trouble really fast. And a lot of times you never see trouble coming.
That's right. If you could see it coming, you could avoid it. So part of Aging Insight is that we want you to think about heading off any potential trouble areas before it arrives. So
yeah, and of course, as advocates for senior citizens, being a large part of our practice is helping people maintain their independence, and because of that, we have had the unfortunate experience of seeing a lot of really tough situations, particularly situations where, as a person ages, their opinions about their own lives just don't seem to get the same level of credence. Yes. That maybe they once did.
Of deference, that's right. So today we thought we would talk about one of the biggest fears that our seniors have, and that is if someone else, whether that be a child or a newcomer into your life, one of the biggest fears is for that person to try to take over your life as a senior. And a lot of times we're not quite as well equipped in our senior years as we might have been when we were younger to fend off someone who is elbowing into our life and trying to make decisions for us and substitute their judgment for our judgment in our senior years. So today we wanted to dedicate this episode to equipping you, the senior, on fending off that person or persons who want to come in and take over your life.
That's right. Now, before we get too far into this, let me cover a few things. Be reasonable. And I say that in the sense of I've had lots of unreasonable clients. Unreasonable in the sense that they said, I'm going to handle my own business forever and nobody's going to help me out with nothing. Yeah, right. When we age, we get to a point where we just can't do things the way we always did. Memory falters. Everybody has memory loss as they get older. Not some people, everybody. Your body will give out on you. You will become frail. You will become vulnerable. You may still be able to make your own decisions, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to need some form of help with some things as you go on. So as we talk about all of this stuff today, and we talk about keeping a lid on these other people that are trying to come in and boss you around, keep in mind that part of this is they're going to be trying to do this because you're going to need things. So really the first thing with Lisa, the first thing, the way I kind of look at it is understand that you're going to need some help, that you're not going to be able to do everything at 85 that you could do at 65. The key is those things that you can't do, are they being done for you on your terms?
Right.
Right. So don't just assume you're going to handle it all. That if you make that mistake, then the dangers that we're going to be talking about will come true.
Well, and John, typically when we've seen a situation where we've got children or grandchildren or distant relatives kind of elbowing into a senior's life and trying to take over, typically we've seen that in a situation where we've had a senior who has refused to make plans or to recognize those vulnerabilities, and frankly some crisis happens that gives the opening for that grandchild or distant relative or whomever to elbow in there, and that's not the person you wanted to be in your life helping you. But yet, by being so unwilling to make a plan and to think about these things in advance, you've cracked open the door when that crisis comes. And what happens is, when that child or whomever is coming in, if they go to a judge to try to get a guardianship over you, the judge is typically going to do what the judge thinks is the safest thing to do for the senior. The safest thing to do.
Right, which doesn't necessarily mean what you want.
Right. So
and that's a hard situation to be in. You don't want to take your business and put it in the hands of some guy in a black robe that you've never met.
Right. So kind of going with your first point, John, that you've got to be reasonable and you've got to kind of think ahead. Don't push away the thought that you could need some help someday to the point that you do nothing and you leave the door open for that malicious relative to come in and attempt to take over your life. So I guess the first thing is anticipate that you might need some assistance someday, and pick your team. Pick the team for yourself, and don't give that black sheep relative the opening to come in. You go ahead and take care and put those players into place to protect you at a later time.
Well, and keep in mind that there may be some vulnerabilities that you suffer later on. And one of the things that we've seen in our own practice, one of the things that a lot of nursing homes, hospitals have seen, are the situation of the dueling power of attorneys, where you've got, maybe mom had her son appointed to handle business, but then daughter comes in, and then mom switches everything to daughter, and then son gets mad and comes in, and so mom switches it back to son, and back and forth and back and forth, getting tugged in these different directions. And unfortunately, we're too late in the game for mom to really be able to have the strength and conviction to do these. And so being able to prevent that sort of situation, that's the kind of thing that we're going to be talking about. Now, we do have to take a quick break, but stick around with us, and you're going to learn some ideas and some warning signs. And so stick around, we'll be right back.
Hi there, I'm Larry Sims. It's been my privilege for the past several years to be a volunteer board member of Hospice of Texarkana, and there I'm able to represent community members like you. We continually customize our end-of-life care to better meet the needs of our community. As an example, our medical director and nurse practitioner still make visits to homes and facilities. Call today to learn more about the help we can give your family. Hospice of Texarkana, the nonprofit hospice established in 1985 for the community, by the community.
As things get older, they require more care. This car and I have seen a lot of miles together, but because I take care of her, she runs just like she did in 1955. That's why I chose the Wadley Senior Clinic, with an individualized care plan designed just for me and a convenient location off Jefferson Avenue. They have everything to keep me running like new. It's not about the miles, it's about the journey. Let the Wadley Senior Clinic keep you happy, healthy, and cruising down the road of life.
Welcome back to Aging Insight. I'm John Ross here with Lisa Schulmeyer, and today we're talking about what do you do when when people are trying to run your life for you. Something that we see a lot of with our senior clients is for whatever reason a person has decided that their decision-making authority should trump your decision-making authority. Now, first thing I wanted to talk about when we get into all of this is that, first there's an element of pre-planning. So, there are some situations, and we'll talk about that in a second, where you're already in the middle of this and you've got people pulling at you in different directions, people trying to tell you what to do, and that sort of thing. But this is where a little bit of pre-planning can go a long way. For example, let's take something like powers of attorney. Right before the break, I was kind of describing the situation where somebody appoints maybe their son as power of attorney, but then later changes it to the daughter, and then changes it back to the son, and then changes it to the daughter again. Oftentimes because the first one they picked, maybe they picked the son, and the son had been in charge for years and years and years, but something changed, and now that daughter has come into the picture. When you're in those early retirement years, 60s, 70s, at that point, your children are grown. They are the adults that oftentimes they are going to be from here on out. Take a real assessment of these people and make decisions. It's one thing to say, oh, I want my son to be my power of attorney, but realize that you may become so weak or frail that you're easily influenced to change your mind at a later date. And so there may be situations where you want to make those sort of appointments in a way that are permanent. Or maybe it's you still want to have the ability to change who you've picked, but there's one or two people that you absolutely don't want.
Sure.
I've seen lots of people with powers of attorney, but rarely do I see people have a separate document that says, I don't really care who's in charge of me as long as it's not this guy.
Well, that's right. We don't see that. And how many times has a senior come to us and said, I think my son is wonderful. I know he would take good care of my business and whatever I needed, but his wife, I don't ever want his wife in charge of anything. She spends money like crazy, and she has a cold heart of steel. And we recently had a situation just like that, where we had a guardianship situation, and the daughter-in-law, who the senior did not care for in the least, seemed to be the one making all the decisions. And this senior thought they had everything taken care of because she had her children in charge, but essentially her children have kind of stepped back and let this daughter-in-law do everything. So it's a great idea to specifically state, if there's someone in your circle or sphere of influence that you don't want, let's get that in writing too.
Yeah, and again, you've got to balance your own personal flexibility with the possibility that these sort of bad things happen in the future. And so, saying, hey, I appoint my son as power of attorney, and I make, try to make this like irrevocable, where I can't change it. I won't have the power to amend this power of attorney or revoke this power of attorney like you normally would. That may be a little disconcerting, but that's a lot of times that's where maybe you could use like a trust, for example, where you've got somebody in charge of it. You're in charge of it now. You're the trustee. You say, well, I want my son to be in charge of it, and this trust is revocable as long as the revocation is approved by me and my CPA.
Right. So you've basically got a third party in place that, they're not really in your business, but they have to be notified if there's a change to your trust or your power of attorney. And so really it's just a way to make sure that we don't have any unscrupulous relatives or friends try to influence you to change your estate planning or your decision documents in such a way that really is detrimental to you. So we sort of have this safeguard of someone who's known you, is familiar with your business, and at least has to be notified and approve the change. So that is a safety net.
Yeah, and and again, I've seen this in our own practice where I had a client who has been a client for many years, and when I originally set up her powers of attorney and stuff, one of the things she said was, I don't want this one individual to be in charge. And I said, well, why don't we put that in the power of attorney? Why don't we say, well, I appoint A, but I absolutely don't want B to do it. And she said, John, I think that would hurt their feelings.
Yes.
I think that would hurt their feelings, and I don't want to take it that far, And
how did as Paul Harvey used to say, John, how did the rest of the story on this work out?
Right. The rest of the story is 4 years later, I start getting phone calls from this other person saying, hey, my mom wants to appoint me as the power of attorney. And I say, well, look, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you. I've got to talk to Mom. And Mom comes in and says, well, he's really pushing me to be the power of attorney, and so I think I probably should change it. And I'm saying, look, do you trust this person? Well, not really. Do you think they're going to look at me? Well, not really. Well, you probably shouldn't do this. And she says, well, okay, I think you're right. Maybe I shouldn't do it. And she leaves, and the next day, she's calling back. Yeah. Well, John, I think I've changed my mind. I'm going to go ahead and do it. And I know it was because that person, she went home, she called that person and said, well, I don't think I'm going to do it. And they berated her or pressured her or whatever until she caved. And, that's one of those cases where I just had to walk away.
Sure.
I knew that this person, but unfortunately I couldn't fix it because we're too far along in the situation. It would have been great had she specifically disallowed that person or prohibited her ability to change that power of attorney absent, say, my approval or her financial advisor's approval or her CPA or her pastor's approval. Sure. Somebody because everybody knew this family and everybody knew this guy is no good.
Yeah, he's a bully.
And yet here we are.
Well,
and
so we've talked about, how do you keep other people from running your life? As a senior, you don't want people coming and doing that. One of the things you need to do is don't assume you will always have the strength to say no. Don't make that assumption. And if you don't make that assumption, then perhaps you can include in your life the planning and the people that will help protect you later on. So
somebody else that can say no for you. Yeah, that's right. Stick around. We'll be right back in just a second.
As things get older, they require more care. This car and I have seen a lot of miles together, but because I take care of her, she runs just like she did in 1955. That's why I chose the Wadley Senior Clinic, with an individualized care plan designed just for me and a convenient location off Jefferson Avenue. They have everything to keep me running like new. It's not about the miles, it's about the journey. Let the Wadley Senior Clinic keep you happy, healthy, and cruising down the road of life.
Hi there, I'm Larry Sims. It's been my privilege for the past several years to be a volunteer board member of Hospice of Texarkana. And there I'm able to represent community members like you. We continually customize our end-of-life care to better meet the needs of our community. As an example, our medical director and nurse practitioner still make visits to homes and facilities. Call today to learn more about the help we can give your family. Hospice of Texarkana, the nonprofit hospice established in 1985 for the community, by the community.
Welcome back, everyone, to Aging Insight. I am Lisa Scholmeyer, and I'm here today with John Ross, and we are elder law attorneys based here in the Texarkana area. And today we're talking about a topic that is always of great interest to our seniors, and that is what to do to prevent the wrong people or other people from coming in and trying to run your life for you as you get a bit older and you have younger relatives, children, whatnot, trying to substitute their judgment for your judgment. And this can get to be a really sticky situation. Old age is not honored in our society the way that youth is. And so a lot of times younger people try to come in and boss our seniors around, and you as a senior need to be prepared to deal with that. It just happens too frequently for you not to consider that this could happen to you. So
well, and if you're sitting at home saying, you know what, John, Lisa, I'm too strong, hard-headed to find myself in this situation. I have assisted commanders of armies, World War II veterans that led tank battalions at the Battle of the Bulge, who were in this situation. Mm-hmm. Age is a cruel beast. Yes. and it does rob you of your abilities to say no and to fight the influence of others. So what we're talking about here is important to everybody. Now, one thing to keep in mind, we see a lot of folks that, again, we've kind of described as frail, vulnerable, but not incompetent.
Right.
Still able to make their own decisions. But you know who makes that determination?
A doctor.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So one thing you might consider in this is if you do have people, if you're feeling uncomfortable, if people are pushing on you, if people are saying that they need to be making decisions for you or that you're not making decisions, one thing you might consider is seeking out some medical advice. Go see a doctor who's trained in this type of work, be that a psychiatrist or a neurologist or a geriatrician, and have them run tests and make some determinations, and use those. Again, a lot of times, Lisa, I've found people to be very intimidated about having those kind of tests run because they're afraid of what it's going to say.
Right, they're afraid that those tests are going to come back and say they are incapacitated. But, a couple of things, John. If it turns out that you have the fear that someone's trying to come in and push you around and run your life, you can go to a specialist or a doctor and pay for that evaluation. And that never has to be disclosed if the results are not favorable to you. You don't have to disclose that to, anybody else in your family. So, keep that in mind, that those test results will be confidential. And frankly, avoiding those tests because you don't want to know what they say about you, that's really the wrong thought process. The idea is, if you are losing some of your capabilities, you want to know that so you can be armed with information on how to slow that process down and to go ahead and put in place the safety barriers that you want to put in place. So the sooner you have that kind of information, the better.
Right, and even if you are maybe not functioning at quite 100%, by getting these exams, a lot of times you can get the doctor to say what you can do and what you need assistance with. Because, a lot of times when these kids are coming in, they're coming in from an all or nothing standpoint.
That's right. They
want to run everything.
Yes.
And that's not what so if you've got doctor's letters that says, you know what, because of your memory loss, a little medication management might be appropriate to make sure you don't forget to take your pills. But otherwise, you're still free to move about as you see fit,
drive your
car, and all these other things. Now you've armed yourself with some real solid medical evidence that you can then turn around and use to fight if this thing goes any further, like to a courthouse. And speaking of courthouses.
Yes. If it comes in and you feel like your children or relatives or someone are really coming in on you, you need to get legal advice. A lawyer that you speak to is your advocate and your advocate alone. That is your attorney-client privilege, and they cannot disclose anything else to other parties, and they will be your champion and your fighter in any battle over running your own affairs. Don't be intimidated. It's if you do nothing, which so many of my seniors feel like, oh, they'll go away, that this whole situation will go away if I just, ignore it. It doesn't. So, sometimes it's hard to make that phone call and to make that appointment, but you know what? When you hire that attorney, you're now sharing that burden and putting a lot of it on your advocate who's going to fight that battle for you.
Yeah, and there are cases like in guardianships where the court appoints an attorney for you, but don't count on that person to be really good. Find somebody who really knows what they're doing and is experienced in this. And I'm not saying they're not out there, but find a good one. And of course, get information, which is why you watch Aging Insight every week. And we'll be back next week with more information. So keep a lookout for us. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this week's Aging Insight program with John Ross and Lisa Scholmeyer. This program is made possible by